Next guest is the author of The Displaced Children of Displaced Children, which won the 2017 Sexton Prize for Poetry, was selected as a 2018 Summer Recommendation of the Poetry Book Society, and named a highly commended collection of by the Forward Arts Foundation. Also the author of the chapbook, The Riddle of Longing. He teaches English at Highland Park High School in Illinois and serves as an educator advisor for the global not-for-profit Narrative 4. Please give a hand for Faisal Mohyuddin. Good height?
Oh, it's a good height, yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Eden, for inviting me back. I was here a year and a half ago, and I got invited back, so I guess that's a good sign. I'm going to read a piece called About the Author. I ask the lion, lurking beyond the irascible tempt of longing, to open his mouth and come closer and closer. I put my head inside his jaws, feel the moist smite of hot breath against my cheeks, catch a shiver of antelope blood on my tongue. I call him King, ask if he prefers a different name, if the unspeakable loneliness of kings ever makes him wish he lived elsewhere, perhaps in a luxury loft in some sprawling city, had an office job that paid a touch too well, could ride a train to and from work, nurse a planter of grass on his balcony, and sweet dream it into the Serengeti whenever he felt a pang of homesickness blooming in his gut. I turned to look down his throat, expecting to see a pink, fleshy cave of hunger. Instead, I find a round window revealing the peppery blackness of night, a host of giddy stars shooting through the vastness. I forget my life is hovering on the wild edge of slaughter. Then remember. I close my eyes, expecting each passing second to be my last, for the lion's teeth to tear into my face, to crush my skull like a cantaloupe. I wait until I become a part of him, until the sky cowers into itself, swallowing me like a tooth. Soon I sense him crying, a child's soft, voiceless sobbing, a song. I open my eyes, see I'm wearing a watch, sitting alone on a park bench in the dying orange of evening, feeding stale bread to a posse of pigeons, while above me an airplane crashes into the sun. We were just talking, Robbie and Eden and Henry and I, just like how much doubt, no matter what you do, you're like, I'll never be able to write something again. So that poem is that, just that, the fear and the doubt of, I can't do it. Or what I've just done is a piece of crap. Blood harmonies. To remember my mother crouching in our kitchen, putting into place a new floor of ceramic tiles, is to remember her blood hopes, her effervescent hunger to keep the feet of her 5 kids from slipping into the wrong kind of slide. Stay one with one another, in blood harmony, she would say. Meaning brother and sister, meaning Muslim and Muslim, meaning blood and blood. Pointing down at the tiles, she would say, Look how the pattern comes together, forms a larger mosaic of meaning. You should live like this. Most of the time, I nodded my head, not knowing how else to respond, agreeing because it was simpler. But sometimes standing there, looking down at a floor not yet finished, at naked patches revealing a history of vinyl, broken and stained, I would think, I just can't be happy, living so small, so safe. Then I would see in those unfinished places the face of some girl I had met the other day, whose name I never asked, knowing it was pointless. I would stand there in the kitchen, thinking how badly I wanted to know her name, to believe in it like a new religion, like my own blood. How I wanted to let myself fall in love with her, because that girl had smiled at me, because that girl was real and alive, and not like one of those phantom wives my mother saw in her dreams and spoke of in metaphors. Thank you. I'm going to read the shortest poem in the book, and it's called Advice to Religious Fanatics. So when I first passed this book, when I'm a teacher and I passed this book around, my students were like, this is our favorite poem. So advice to religious fanatics. Chill the fuck out. Please, for God's sake. So we were talking about how you can't really say the word fuck it. So I've never read it out loud, but I do proudly share that piece. I'm going to read a new poem. I haven't written anything new in so long, and I finally did. And I wanted to read that. So I love Othello, I love Shakespeare, I read a lot about Shakespeare, and this is a poem called Othello Arrives in America, and it imagines Othello as someone arriving today, not whenever he was. Othello arrives in America. Gradually, as father's warnings about the savagery of any place where mirrors stand as sites of worship descend each day more deeply into the murk of memory, this body will forget the swaying of the endless, light-starved days I spent at sea, dreaming no longer of agonizing glory, but of namelessness, a truce of sorts with destiny's stubborn indifference. Until then, may these lungs still pine for the heart-sweetening scent of sandalwood, for even the slick coconut oil stink mother kneaded into my sister's hair. Departure depends, like so much of a Muslim sense of time, on the fickle logic of the many-faced moon. To yearn for exile, then, demands a commitment to madness, in unmooring oneself, blood and all, from the reach of shame, its power to unravel resolve. If yesterday and the yawning emptiness of its robes can be transformed from prayer into confession, then perhaps rebirth is possible. Or so I tell myself when we make landfall, the night sky frothy with stars, its bleakness merely a measure of flummoxed courage. When finally I emerge from my coffin of darkness into a darker darkness, alive but no longer innocent enough to touch any river without triggering entrapment, I make this new life's first ablution with the filched dirt of America, starting with my feet and mucky hair, moving backwards, neck, arms, until I smear my face with it, belch out 3 mouthfuls of mud, and swallow the unuttered bismillahs I'd ferried here from home, their protections too risky to keep. So I'll read the last poem. It's called Afterwards. I couldn't figure out how to. Is it Pachki or Pashki or it's the
Puchki.
Puchki.
Yeah, Puchki.
So that word. So I love donuts. It's like one of my favorite things. It's a soft spot. And today I was like in the school cafeteria, like eyeing this donut. And a colleague of mine walked by and goes, "You have to have one today." So obviously it's Fat Tuesday, and I didn't get it. And then once I got back to the office, someone was like, "Oh, that's what it was because of the timing." I think, is it Fat Tuesday too?
It is.
Yes.
It is. Okay, that's what I thought. So it's called Afterwards. It's about my love of donuts and how they can complicate life sometimes. This actually came out in an anthology of. Did I read this last time? Oh, good. Okay, I was trying to read things I hadn't read before, but there's. I thought it was a joke, but a friend of mine had sent me this call for submissions, and it was called the Donut Book. And it was just poems about donuts, and I was like, this is like the greatest submission. So I wrote this poem, and I was like dancing when it got accepted, and I'll end with this afterwards. I'm gonna get a donut later on, another one. On my worst days, as I'm about to consume in secret an entire assorted dozen, while seated in my darkened kitchen, armed with knife and fork, white handkerchief noosed around my throat, an attempt, I guess, to give the gluttony a touch of class. I think of each long john as a life raft, the ringed others as lifesavers tossed into a sea in which, after breaking a half dozen promises and eyeing a half dozen more, I've begun to drown. Not in the oily translucence lingering along the surface of the box, but in knowing once again the delight I found in the first surrender will be with each subsequent bite a diminishing love, leaving me filled but unfulfilled. I promise next time I'll buy only one. That's a lie. But know in my heart that everything about donuts is a lie. That the best part is their missing center, their resemblance to the me I've become. When there's nothing left to sink my shame into, I close my eyes, listen to my teeth sing, lick the tip of my finger, and in gentle jabs, search the crummy tabletop for stray sprinkles, each hoping to be found, eaten by a lonely someone who shares the pain of existing on the glazed layer of someone else's idea of perfection. Thank you.